Welcome to Canyon Professional Development and our first Principals Collaborative Community. As you know, we had a little technological snafu this morning, so I'm so happy that those of you who are here were able to join us. Without further ado, you'll see on the screen, it says Jackie Newton. Actually, Amapola Shimp is filling in for Jackie today. So I'm going to allow Ama just to talk for a couple of minutes about some options that we could bring to you for non-degree studies. So Ama, do you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you. Hi, welcome to GCU. We're so happy to have you here. So as Carol let you know that I'm just kind of filling in for Jacqueline, but you'll definitely want to write down Jacqueline's information. It has her email address and direct phone number there. We are the continuing education department. So we have all of the continuing education courses that you and your teachers need to get endorsements, move across a pay scale, or meet state requirements. They're all at the discounted rate of $150 per credit hour. And with most of the school districts, I believe we have partnerships with all of the school districts. So please make sure that when you reach out, that you let them know what school district you work for, so that way you can get a 10% scholarship towards each class. And we also have single courses as well, but those are a little different. So if you have any questions at all, like I said, don't hesitate to call this number or reach out to Jacqueline and she can get you that information.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today. And yeah, you guys, please take advantage of all the discounts that you can get and share this information with your staff because they also get the discounts. So, and plus just Jackie and Ama are some of the best people in the world to work with. So you're just going to love chatting with them. So Ama, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much.
Have a good one. And so our featured presenter today is Dr. Suzanne Zentner. And we're just so excited and lucky, I think, to have her with us today. She's going to be presenting on something that's a little bit different for a PCC topic, but something that I felt you all would feel was very relevant, timely, and just helpful to you personally as you're planning financially, potentially for retirement, or just really just thinking about some of the goals that you have financially, or maybe your teachers might have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give Suzanne a chance to start the share on her end.
Okay, well, good afternoon. And I want to start by thanking Grand Canyon University for the opportunity to share this work of mine that I just am very passionate about. The segment we're going to talk about today, or the module, is one of several that I have tried to build out to help people better understand their salary and benefits package with the overarching goal of teacher recruitment and retention. So the module today, I'm not sure how far we'll get. They're intended for a longer period of time, but starting with budgeting basics, moving to automating your savings, and then reviewing some of the pre and post-retirement tools that are available commonly in school districts. So really this class success, I'm going to skip over this. My background and my why, as I said, this has just been a deep, passionate project of mine. I really feel that by helping you in this content area, not only does it help you personally, but I know that then invariably that helps your family, which in turn hopefully helps your district and our profession ultimately. In the end, we have to also keep in mind, regardless of where you are in your educational journey or your financial journey, it's never too early or too late to start a financial plan. Sometimes when I visit with brand new teachers, there's a feeling of, oh gosh, I can't even think about retirement. I've got so much other things on my plate that I have to focus on now. So I'll just delay that for a little bit. And we know that compound interest is the #1 most powerful tool for any of us to build wealth over time. So it's really that idea of just letting your money grow on top of your money on top of your money, which time is that magic ingredient. And similarly, I also visit with a lot of folks who are getting ready to retire. One module that I mentioned earlier in this larger set is called the 16-step retirement checklist. And Oftentimes in that class, if people are 5 or fewer years out from retirement, there's some kind of lamenting that happens about, oh gosh, I wish I would have known this when I started the profession. I wish I would have known this 10 years ago, whatever the story is. And the idea is it's never too late to start a plan either. So regardless of your age or where you are in your journey, it's never too early or late to start a financial plan. The other thing that's really important to keep in mind is while you can read any book on personal finance, keep in mind that your situation is really unique to you. And personal finance is just incredibly personal and private. So what works for one person doesn't work for someone else. And sometimes it gets a little awkward to talk about it. So don't ever discuss any details of your situation with someone that you don't implicitly trust or feel would give you the best advice. Keep in mind, like any content, just like teaching, curriculum, those types of things change all the time. So too do the laws and recommendations from the professional financial field. So understanding that what we shared today always, like everything else, is subject to change as things change over time. My disclaimer, I am not a certified financial planner, a financial coach, a wealth advisor, insurance agent, any such profession. I, like you, am a professional educator. I consider myself more of a professional hobbyist in this area. I spent a number of years in human resources where I really just loved learning more and sharing what I knew with staff of all divisions, certified staff, classified staff, administrators. Everyone seems to benefit from this content, as well as how long you've been in the profession. At any rate, keep in mind that any information provided in these sessions is really for information and educational purposes only, and therefore does not constitute any tax, legal, insurance, or investment advice. If you have an investment professional, hopefully you're visiting with them regularly, you're having conversations about planning for your future. One of the things I will also say is if you are a DIY type of person, there certainly are an abundance of tools on the internet to help you. Fidelity Investments, Vanguard Investments, Schwab, these are very well-known, very well-respected resources that have low fees, or in some cases, no fees for their funds. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of this session or this module, budgeting, and what it's all about. In 2019, the Federal Reserve came out and said that they indicated about 40% of Americans do not have $400 to cover an emergency. That was a pretty startling statistic. I think took a lot of people back and gave us real reason to pause and really help people build better budgets. Another startling statistic is about 20% of adults cannot pay their current month's bill. 25% of Americans have no retirement savings, and 20% are managing a major unexpected medical bill dating back to as far back as 2018. And so we often hear about the crippling effects of medical bills, and we do know that medical bills are the #1 reason for personal bankruptcy in the United States. It has nothing to do with people's ability or inability to manage their money. Life happens, and sometimes people have very unfortunate circumstances to handle. Credit card delinquencies for your children at home, your young adults, or young folks that are working or that you're working beside in school districts. Credit card delinquencies are also on the rise, unfortunately. So what does budgeting mean to you? For most people, this means this has a very negative connotation. It means I'm going to be deprived. It means I have to cut back. I can't have any fun. It means that it's a black and white world. And in fact, it really isn't. If you think about what a budget is, it's really just a breakdown of income and expenses. Money coming in, money coming out. That's all it is. And although it's simplistic in design, it's definitely not easy to adhere to one. And so we live in a hyper-consumptive society with ongoing marketing and efforts to get us to spend money. So it takes a lot of discipline and resistance to adhere to a plan that you make that you see works for you. And if you can break all of that down, it really ends up being just living on less than you make. Again, money in, money out. Just a nice, interesting quote. If you start thinking about a budget positively, maybe it will catapult your financial future. So if you change the way you look at things, in other words, not looking at a budget in a negative way, but rather in a positive way, maybe you can see the many merits that a budget provides. Personal finance, Dave Ramsey has said consistently, as simply as just, it's 80% behavior. It's only 20% of knowing these details that we share in modules like this. It's really just exercising that knowledge in a way that makes your future a bit more bright. Budget is the cornerstone of a solid financial foundation, which is exactly why we're starting with this module today. I have built out up to 13 modules, from understanding Arizona retirement, the basics of Social Security, debt elimination strategies, understanding student loans, navigating them, understanding what you can apply for loan forgiveness, and so on. So there's preparing for open enrollment, all kinds of different modules that may benefit you or your district. Building a budget, just a question to think about on your own right now is, can you estimate your monthly expenses within $300? Just think about that for a minute. If you were to accurately report your expenses for last month, do you think you could have estimated within $300 what that number would be? My guess is most people would answer no to that. That is certainly the response I typically get when I teach this class in person. How about this? Can you estimate your monthly income within $200? Again, going back to last month, could you estimate your monthly income within $200? And you'll notice the dollar amount difference between the expenses and income, and there's a reason for that. Most people say quite clearly, yes, I absolutely know what my monthly income is. I know when I get that ping on my phone, when that direct deposit hits, or I just simply know because I'm notified through my payroll portal or whatever it is. Now, if you work on commission, obviously it's a little different situation where you're not exactly sure what's coming in each month. But for most of us as educators, we know every 2 weeks or every month how much we're going to earn. The difference in the dollar amounts was intentional because typically our expenses, first of all, we know less about those. So we offer a larger margin of error. And secondly is to help understand that expenses obviously vacillate greatly during the course of a year. So for example, if you were to evaluate your electric bill in January, my guess is it's quite different than it is in April, then quite different than it is in November. Similarly, holiday spending, back to school spending, summer vacations, those types of things. You can kind of, as you build a budget over the years, you can see the ebb and flow throughout the year and ultimately plan for each event. Question just to ask yourself is, have you ever been on a budget, a real budget, and or are you currently on a budget? If so, what does that look like? Is it working? Is it cumbersome? Is it motivating? All of those kind of emotions that come with budgeting often open up conversations that we can have with our spouse or partner or family. So we know there's lots of advantages. Obviously, I'm teaching a class on this, so I believe in budgeting. The advantages are you can see pretty clearly what kind of ratio you have of income to expenses. You can also help categorize. They help you plan for the future. What's coming up when we have 2 kids in college next year, when this year we have none in college. It helps you plan for things like vacations and house repairs and car replacement and so on. And yes, there are absolutely disadvantages to a household budget. If you think for a minute, what might be a disadvantage in creating a personal or household budget? Well, there's a couple that you might want to think about. One is that you become so maniacal about it that you end up becoming miserly and not spending any money. And we need to eat well, we need to take care of ourselves, we need to keep our house at a certain temperature to stay healthy. And so any of this kind of stuff you can take to an extreme that becomes dangerous, frankly. The other thing is a spousal conflict. Money is a touchy subject. It's the #2 reason for divorce after infidelity. So it gets to be, in some situations, it can be a very uncomfortable conversation to have. So I also have a module on overcoming those challenges as a couple. Successful budgeting mindset, there's just a really interesting study that goes back to Stanford University way back in the 70s. And it's called the marshmallow test, for those of you that might be familiar with it. The idea was that a researcher sat in a small room with a young child and said, okay, I have a marshmallow that I'm going to put on this table for you. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to walk out of the room and you're going to stay in here by yourself. And if you don't eat the marshmallow by the time I come back, I'll give you 2. In other words, I'm going to incentivize you for the delayed satisfaction of eating that marshmallow. And so in the first instance, the researcher would leave and the young child would gobble up the marshmallow. And then, of course, the opposite would happen if the researcher left and the marshmallow was still on the table. Then, in fact, that young child would get 2 marshmallows. So this whole idea is the same application in budgeting. This idea of delayed gratification, making just really small adjustments. You know, you don't have to go full throttle and full pendulum swing with budgeting. Small adjustments today can help you build that big, beautiful tomorrow. So at this point, I'm going to have you open up the budget spreadsheet that Grand Canyon University sent to you. And I want to review some of the features on that spreadsheet. So if you bring up that spreadsheet, I'll grab mine. Assuming you're ready, we'll just get rolling here. So this budget spreadsheet, you'll see, it's too small. You'll see the teacher's net worth up in the upper right-hand corner, budget spreadsheet in the middle, and then a bunch of fields underneath. The spreadsheet is designed in a very specific fashion. After looking at probably 100 or so free spreadsheets on the internet, just creating one that seemed really thorough, but also very concise. And so let's start on the left-hand side. This is a list of all expenses for 1 calendar year. And you'll see January, February, all the way across horizontally. You'll see then there's a column for annual. This is a total summation of how much, in this case, you spend on rent per year or your mortgage. And then it also calculates for you automatically the monthly average. None of these fields are locked. All of them are able to, you can change the field, just double click on it, call it whatever you want. But these are the classifications that I think make a lot of sense for most everyone. So there's housing, utilities, food, vehicles, personal care, student loans, recreation, and so on. Then on the right-hand side, remember we said there was ins and there was outs of a budget. The other side is the income side. And so we have very nicely organized over here your net take-home pay. We're not going to worry about the gross pay. That's the amount you earn before taxes. The net take-home pay is what you get in your check. We have a classification for interest income if you're an investor. There's also another column, other, for folks who have other sources of income that they want to add in. Maybe they have a rental property or something. Again, you can add as many columns and rows into this spreadsheet as you'd like. And then we move into an investment column down here. This is what we call paying yourself first, and we'll get into what that means hopefully before the end of the session. But all of those areas, including always a column for other, are here that, again, you can fully customize for your need. And then my very favorite feature is, instead of you crunching all these numbers and trying to make sense of all of them at the end of the month, this does a complete summation. So total income, total expenses and debt, total investments. And then if you have a positive cash flow at the end of the month, this column will remain green. If you have a negative cash flow, that will turn red. So this budgeting spreadsheet is really designed to be thorough yet concise, and ultimately really easy to use and hopefully motivating. Often what I find is if people even start this journey and these fields up here are red early on, people see some low-hanging fruit that they can capitalize on quite quickly without changing their entire standard of living. And all of a sudden the columns are turned to green when people better understand how much interest really costs them, when they understand maybe they've got some memberships that they're paying for every month that they hadn't been using that they can just quickly cancel. You can impact your cash flow quite quickly. So let's take about 10 minutes to work on that right now, and then we'll come back and continue the session. So one of the things that hopefully you'll do at the end of this session, when time allows, is start that conversation with your spouse and partner. It's a great opener. You can say that this was a professional development series that you stumbled onto through Grand Canyon, or it was part of a professional assignment that you needed to create. But it's a way to open the door and start the conversation and say, gosh, are we on the same page here? Do we really understand what our cash flow is? Life is really, really busy. And so to take time out to have that conversation and even create some joint goals is a very healthy exercise. Once again, be thorough and honest as you fill out that budget spreadsheet by yourself or with your spouse. Make sure that you're not leaving something out saying, well, that expense will never happen again. I'm just going to leave that one out because that was such an outlier. That really doesn't help you over the course of time. So the more detailed you can be and not leaving out any details, the better you'll be in the long run. And then once you build the first month, make a plan to visit it regularly. Maybe you're going to visit it monthly. Maybe there's a nice chance for the two of you to connect on a weekend day, or some kind of system that you establish where you visit and review your budget together on a regular basis. The idea is to keep the dialogue open. We have different wants and needs, and maybe we have different saving and spending habits. But the idea is just getting each other on the same page, creating a way to have some compromise, and then having those joint goals in the end. Identifying patterns. We certainly all have spending patterns and habits. I personally love Starbucks, so I go there as often as I can justify. At the start of this process for me many years ago, I realized, gosh, I literally went there too much. And so identifying my own pattern and saying, I think I could handle a little less and still enjoy it as I do was a good move. Preparing for emergencies. If you're on a shoestring budget every month, you aren't prepared for the realities of life, which is things happen that we don't always anticipate. If the last 18 months haven't taught us that, I don't know what will. Or maybe we're on 2 years here pretty soon. But anyway, and then of course, budgeting shouldn't be all, grind, and negative thoughts and not doing this and not doing that, but rather maybe the idea is, well, what if we tweak a little bit at the house during the course of the year, and then we can have that exceptional trip that we've been waiting for, or we can plan for that retirement home that we want to buy, a little condo in on the beach in California, whatever it is. Then once you're done with your budget, it's a perfect opportunity to open up the conversation about what are your observations, feelings, and reactions. Some people get really scared, while other people feel really good. They're actually pleasantly surprised that they're in as good a shape as they're in. It's just they haven't taken the time to analyze where they are because life is so incredibly busy. 3 areas that surprised you, if you can think about what those might be or identify those and maybe target those as some low-hanging fruit. The number 1 area that I have found in teaching this class over the years is people have been really startled, I guess, is almost a perfect word for how often they or how much they spend going out to eat. It does add up. And COVID, of course, has changed a lot of our behaviors. So I'm not sure that that is what yours would be, but try to identify some areas that surprised you. And then if you're not budgeting, I think it's a good time to say, why aren't I? Is it the hecticness of life? Is it that I really don't want to face the reality? What is the reason that you're not? And maybe you can figure out a way to get past that. If you do plan to move forward with this and you anticipate some bumps in the road, maybe it's from a spouse, maybe you want to create a family budget. It's really healthy for kids to understand budgeting and see that being role modeled in a household. Do you anticipate the conflict being or the barrier being conflict? And if so, how can you manage that, or how can you anticipate how to handle that so that you can move this forward? Keeping in mind, as we said at the beginning of this, that budgeting is really two-sided, can turn this into more of a fun exercise. There's a blogging couple they go by the name of the Thrifty Couple, and they came up with this concept that really seems to resonate for people, and it's called the 2x2 concept. They thought, what if we could look at both ends of the equation, and in the case of expenses, increase our on the income side of the equation. What if we could increase our income by just 2% a month? And on the expense side of the equation, what if we could reduce our expenses by 2% a month? That didn't feel daunting. That didn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a goal I'll never be able to attain. And if you adopt an approach like this, you can change those numbers. Maybe for you, it's a 1x1, or maybe it's a 10x10, however aggressive or reasonable your numbers are. But here's what it looks like. Let's just say their income and expenses were identical. In the first month, the expense budget is reduced by 2% or $40. So it would reduce to $19.60 for the next month. They would say, okay, if September we spent $2,000, in October, we're only going to commit to spending $1,960. And if we made $2,000 in September, in October, let's commit to bringing in $40 more a month. And so you say, well, I'm so busy. How in the world can I take on another job? I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the wherewithal. An easy way to think about maybe generating some extra income is selling a couple things on Craigslist. Maybe you have a tutoring skill that you can just do on occasion. All kinds of things in the gig economy are now available to us that weren't available to us just even a couple of years ago. And if you carry this forward, then the next month, reducing again by 2%, they're down to $19.20, and then their income is up to $20.80. So you can see the split and how you can really move yourself forward in an exponential fashion. 10 successful steps. One of the things you'll notice on your budget spreadsheet is on the far left-hand column, there's an N/W column. That's your needs and wants. And identifying the difference between a need and a want in your budget is a really important step in better understanding your budget. Some people refer to them as discretionary or non-discretionary, or essential and non-essential items in your budget. Your budget discoveries, again, we talked about targeting those immediate savings, grabbing that low-hanging fruit. Maybe you've got a Netflix account you haven't used in 6 months. By canceling it, you save a quick $30 a month. That would, in the prior example, that would almost be your 2% savings without changing any other lifestyle behavior. You can set preliminary goals, thinking about short, intermediate, and long-term goals that you might want to set. Sometimes you find your pacing for those was slower than you anticipated, so you can kind of get more aggressive. Other times you have to back off a little bit on those. Number 4, establishing an emergency fund. This is absolutely essential. The idea is to build up a cash account so that not if, but rather when the emergency hits, you're prepared, you're not panicked, and you're not worried about being able to come up with the expenditure. The financial industry suggests that you keep anywhere from 2 to 6 months worth of income, assuming your income is more than your expenses, in your emergency fund. And if you can't even think about starting that, it feels too overwhelming to get to 2 to 6 months worth of income. Think about setting up a separate account and just dropping in $20, $25, or $50 a month, and then just watching it grow over time. You'd be surprised how quickly that adds up. If you want to be extra conservative, you can add in your insurance deductibles or any upcoming demands and goals that you have set. If you have a new roof that you need to put on your house, or you have a car replacement coming up, whatever it is, adding a little bit in each month to cover that is a really helpful idea in creating your emergency fund. We are very fortunate people as educators. We have something called an employment contract that lasts likely anywhere from 9 to 12 months. If you are in a less than stable job, or your spouse or significant other is in a less than stable job, that emergency fund should probably be even more robust than the 2 to 6 months. In the end, what they really do is they provide you peace of mind. They prepare you for the inevitable. No one's life is linear. We have all kinds of setbacks and things that we never anticipated were coming our way. So it's a really good first step in getting you set up on moving forward, and then ultimately able to invest. Adopting a budget strategy gave you an idea of the 2x2 strategy. There's also the notebook. This is a very common, very old school idea where you just put a notebook on a counter or a kitchen table, and every expenditure that you make during the course of the month, you just scribble down in that notebook, and then at the end of the month, you just add those up. If you've gone through the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University course, you know about the envelope system. This is where you take specific envelopes dedicated to expenses that you commonly have every month: food, utilities, gas, car, those types of things, and you allocate a certain amount of cash in each envelope. It is a cash-only system, so that when that cash you spend out of that designated envelope is gone, that's it. There's no more. So it's a good way to see that physical depletion of cash. It's very, very easy to slide a credit card or to send a Venmo or a PayPal charge without really experiencing the pain that works by physically handing over dollar bills. And once you develop a system, another idea is called the 60% solution. 60% are those committed expenses that you have, 30% is dedicated to long-term and short-term savings, and 10% is for that fund money. Or you might want to adopt an idea just like how a lot of school districts budget, and that's through the zero-based budgeting strategy, where you start with your core non-negotiable expenses. So for you and I, that would be you need a place to live, you need food, you need utilities, and then you kind of build out from there. School districts, of course, our primary expense is people. And so you build the rest of your balance sheet on school budgeting based on moving out from building personnel to buildings to curriculum and so on. Another a step in successful budgeting is really feeling the urgency. You know, you can't put this off because, as we mentioned earlier, that power of compound interest is just so essential to building your wealth over time. Shifting your mindset from budgeting being an act of deprivation to one that's setting you up for success in the future. And then changing habits. If you do recognize you have habits that need to be changed, or maybe as a couple you can do some things differently, that's also a great first step in getting started. For a lot of folks, it means stopping using credit cards. They are so easy to get out of control. And so whether you stop them or just decrease the amount of usage, make more, spend less, back to the basics, trying to leverage your free time. And then adopting a debt elimination strategy. There's a whole separate module on this for anyone interested in learning the different strategies that are out there today. Really trying to work on increasing the minimums. There are strategies like a spend fast or a debt detox. This is just the idea of, for a prescriptive period of time, you're going to eliminate all non-essential spending. And then sticking with a budget spreadsheet. Hopefully you like this one. It's yours to keep and hopefully use for a long time. If you don't, find one that really works for you, because it really is the goalpost for you, and it really helps you organize what's happening every month. And as you get really good in budgeting, you'll be able to compare month over month and year over year and recognize the changes that are either coming or adversity that you've overcome. Those types of things are where you can really get motivated over the course of time by looking at spreadsheets. Leveraging technology, there's all kinds of tools out there now for us that help with budgeting. Mint is, from what I read, is the most popular app. It is free and it links all forms of finance for you. For some people, they really, really like that, where the mortgage is connected to the district payroll, it's connected to the bank account, which is connected to the checking account, and so on. Some people find it a little invasive and a little too much, but they've millions and millions of downloads, so they're certainly doing something right. There's mobile apps for serious budgeters, YNAB, and Honeydew is one for couples. And if you do have interest in maybe generating a little bit more income for your house, there is sidehustle.com. They review and rate over 350 online platforms. I just found it really fascinating to learn more about the side hustle world, and have talked to quite a few people who are in it, and they just absolutely love it. So again, what that means is you can do as little or as much as you want. You're on a schedule all your own. So if all of a sudden you're sitting around on a Saturday afternoon, you're like, oh, I think I'm gonna work for TaskRabbit, or I'm gonna drive an Uber or a Lyft for an hour, you can do it for just that little bit of time. Okay, let's move into the next concept, which is called paying yourself first. And so for those of you that have heard about it, you know exactly what it is. It was devised by a gentleman by the name of David Bach. He's a very well-known author. He wrote his first book that kind of put him on the charts was Smart Women Finish Rich. He followed that up with Smart Couples Finish Rich, and he also authored The Automatic Millionaire. These are all books that really talk a lot about paying yourself first and why it works as well as it does. Essentially, at the end of all the translations, it means that you become a fixed cost in your budget. So as you go back to work on your budget, you'll see that column of paying yourself first. When you take $25 a month and you put it in a 403B or a 457 or a health savings account, or just a simple savings account for your emergency fund, you become a fixed cost, just like your mortgage, your utilities, your food, those things that we said were absolutely essentials. It's really built on the fact that when you set up automatic savings and you just set it up and leave it alone, the inertia takes over and your lifestyle adjusts. It's really that simple. If you can take $25 off your budget, you really generally don't notice it. And so over the course of time, that really adds up. And the idea is if you don't have it, you can't spend it. And obviously, hopefully, not obviously, hopefully you won't miss it. The number one barrier to paying yourself first, the amount of pushback you get from people usually comes in one phrase, and that is, I can't afford it. I've already stretched. I'm already upside down. I can't come up with any more money a month. A lot of times, once people go through their budget spreadsheet, they find out, wow, I actually can do it. It is very affordable for me. So I'm going to show you why I think you can afford it. This is an actual employee's earnings. Her gross biweekly earnings were $16,538. And I'm going to compare for you if she puts no money into a tax sheltered annuity or a 403B or 457. Those are the common tools available in school districts. Or if she puts in $50, $100, or $150. So in this case, she is married. She has 0 exemptions. So with her biweekly earnings, the federal withholding, dollar amount, all the way down, you can see all the withholdings, all the way through the FICA, the Social Security and Medicare withholding, state retirement. And then you'll see here, she put 0 into a tax sheltered annuity. So her take home pay is $1,159.94. If I shift you over to the $50 column, she says, okay, well, maybe I can be convinced $50 isn't all that much. At the end of the day, because you see her taxable withholding, her withholdings and her income tax fall, because the $50 was taken off of the $16,515 before the tax rate was applied, these numbers fall. These numbers will always be the same. And she ends up taking home $1,117. And you'll say, well, wait a minute, that's not $50 difference. You're right. It's only a $42.65 difference. So she made, what is that, $7.35 she made just by that $50 withholding. Let's move to the $100 column. You can see the same pattern. Taxable amounts are reduced, and the $100 really only costs her $85. And the $150 really only costs her $127.95. So this is a really powerful slide to show you how pre-tax retirement tools really provide a value. So they, and that's only half of the story, because the first half is in that payroll withholding. The second half will come in annual income tax time, because that amount will be proportionally reduced to how much you withhold. So let's go over the type of tools that most districts offer. You might have heard of them as pre-tax retirement tools or deferred comp. Kind of think of them as the not yets. They haven't been taxed yet. So these are the 403Bs and 457s. They reduce the taxable income now, just like I showed you on that chart, with the idea that you will pay taxes later. You will pay taxes when you pull those funds out, presumably when you're retired and your income tax bracket is lower than it is in your working years. And that was the whole premise. Let people save their money today and pay the taxes at a later date when they're at a lower income tax level. You can see in 2021, you can put a fair amount of money into these tools. And that's $19,500 into each of them if you so choose, either or, a 403B or a 457. And then if you're over the age of 50, you can add another $6,500. So the natural question at this point is, well, what's the difference between a 403B and a 457? And there really is no difference other than one feature, and that is, if you open up a 457 with a district and you break service, you can have access to those funds before you're 59 and a half without paying a 10% penalty. So the 403B and the 457 otherwise cannot be accessible until you're 59 and a half unless you pay an additional 10% payment with 10% penalty, excuse me. And again, you will be taxed at an ordinary income tax rate at withdrawal. So you're delaying the taxes now for paying them later. So that's why we call them the not yets. There's also a feature called required minimum distribution. The government says eventually they've got to get that money from you. You haven't paid taxes in the time of payroll. The money's been growing over time. At 72, they start making you take that money out at a rate that they determine, and then you pay income tax at that time. Required minimum distributions, as I said, was that minimum amount from the IRS. All of these types of accounts are included in RMDs. And the Roth account or the health savings account are the ones we're going to talk about next. They are excluded from required minimum distributions, meaning you can hold those for as long as you want, and there's no stipulation of when you have to basically take that money into your own possession. They're calculated, it's kind of a minor point, but they divide the account balance by your life expectancy. And so it's a proportion every year. Their goal, the government's goal, frankly, is to have that count depleted at the end of your life. They start at age 72. And again, all that money is considered income. And so there's another factor to consider with these, because as it's considered tax, then as you get into your Social Security years, there is the potential that could bump you up in the rates that you pay for Medicare and also for Social Security itself. And so again, separate modules on Social Security and Medicare, talking about how taxation works in your retirement years. But things for you to think about if you open up a 403B or 457. If you leave money to a beneficiary in a pre-tax retirement tool, they have 10 years to pull that money out. So this is just something that was recently put in through the Secure Act, and that again, if it's a sizable amount of money, this could definitely build up or increase the taxable rate for your beneficiary. So it used to be that there was no time frame on it, and so you could just kind of take a little bit out as you needed for as many years as you wanted. But now they want those accounts depleted within 10 years if you are a beneficiary. Once you take those funds out, you can use them just to live on for taxes. You can reinvest the money into any of these types of accounts. You can transfer them to a loved one. You can give them to a charitable organization of your choosing. And again, there's a lot more on these. So the point, and I think I made it earlier in the session here, is although personal finance is really easy, it's not simple. Things get complicated pretty quickly. So understanding these tools and how they benefit you before you start using them really makes good sense. Let's talk about the post-retirement tools. These are the ones that you pay taxes on now. And these are absolutely among my favorites and the favorites of most financial planners. They are your Roth accounts: Roth IRA, Roth 403B, Both are generally offered in districts around the state that I have been familiar with. If you do not have a Roth 403B in your district, it is certainly an easy ask typically, and your HR department can add that with whoever's managing your accounts. The idea is that you just pay taxes now with the idea of never having to face them in the future. And so as we are now talking quite robustly about inflation and how that's going to play out in the next several years, it sure makes good sense, it seems to me, to just pay the taxes now and never, ever, ever have to worry about them again. Again, these accounts do not face required minimum distributions. They are just, you put it in that Roth IRA or the Roth 403B, and it sits and grows and grows and grows. And you can take it out at any time that you want. And it is not seen as income when you pull it out. Most cases, they have a broader array of investment options. And you'll see that the amount you can put in a Roth IRA is notably lower than you could put in a 403B. However, the Roth 403B, you can put in the identical amount. The other thing is, if you're a high income earner, the Roth IRAs have some limitations. If you make more than $140,000 in 2021, you are not able to contribute to a Roth IRA. Again, here's those nice Roth 403B contribution levels where you can do identical to the straight 403B or 457. And there are no income limits on the 403B. Little known facts about Roth is your adolescent, your child in high school or middle school, they can open up one with their first job. If you have money on a Roth and you have not ever purchased a home and you're going to go purchase your first home, you can take up to $10,000 out of a Roth without any penalties. Another big point to keep in mind is if you do have to access your funds out of a Roth before age 59 and a half, you only pay taxes on the earnings, not the contributions. So that's a really important fact. That's not the same with the 403B and the 457. And you also would not be penalized for any early withdrawals if you use them for education expenses. Roth funds must, however, be held for 5 years to avoid any kind of penalty. And once they're withdrawn, they cannot be put back in. Each spouse can take up to $5,000 from any retirement account for the birth of a child or an adoption. And so let's just see the power of a Roth over time. So let's take Spanish teacher Sally starts teaching at 25. She invests $5,000 in a Roth. We know she can go up to $6,000, but she just chooses to do $5,000. Her average rate of return is 8%. Well, how much do you think she'll have in her tax-free withdrawal bucket when she retires at 67 years old? I want you to think about that for a minute. $5,000 a year from age 25 to age 67, she'll have $1.6 million. And then the last is a combination of the pre-tax and post-tax savings tools that's combined. It's the value on the front end that we saw with the 403B and the 457 because it reduces your taxable earnings. And it also gives you the benefit of no taxes when you pull that money out. And they're called health savings accounts. They are really the full enchilada. And if you have access to one, you really ought to start thinking about using this to its fullest. They're only available with high deductible health plans. They are the only triple tax advantage left in the US tax code. So you pay no taxes going in, you pay no taxes on the growth that the vehicle may have, any investment that you put in your health savings account, and then you pay no taxes when you pull that money out. You can access it at any time without any required minimum distribution confines. So all the benefits of the 403B, all the benefits of the Roth. And here you can see the 2001 maximum contributions for health savings account. I've got an entire module dedicated to health savings accounts so people can really see if they're best suited for their personal situation. One of the disappointing realities of these is, and why I get so excited about helping people with these, is only about 5% of people have their health savings account money invested in retirement accounts. So if you have money in a health savings account and it's just sitting in a savings account earning less than 1% interest, you're missing out on one of the biggest features of the health savings account. So talk to your provider or your school district, your HR department, whoever handles those, is how you can better invest that money. I'm going to stop there today. I want to thank Grand Canyon University again. Dr. Lippert, thank you for the invitation to join you and all the folks at Grand Canyon. My best to each and every one of you for the successful school year ahead, and my appreciation for all you do every day. Thank you.
And Suzanne, thank you. That was so helpful and so informative. We really appreciate you taking your time to share your expertise with us and to, I don't know, just to get us thinking about budgeting. So again, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. And I know so many are going to benefit from this information.
Thank you, Dr. Lippert. Bye-bye.